In this lecture, I'm going to be talking about health and healing in Indigenous traditions. Now, of course, this is a vast topic, and when I talk about Indigenous traditions, it's a kind of umbrella term for earth-based, orally based spiritual and religious traditions. Now, because this is such a vast topic, I'm just going to be focusing on some examples from Turtle Island, so North America, and I'm going to end with an example from the region I live in around the Robinson-Huron Treaty area. When we're talking about Indigenous health and healing, we can't really go forward without talking about the context of colonialism. This, as many of you will already know, I assume, had devastating impacts on Indigenous cultures around the world and had a direct impact on health. So this is an example where we can't bracket out the larger political and social contexts that impact health. So for instance, just to give an example, food sovereignty is a huge part of this issue because if some of you are in healthcare, you'll know that rates of diabetes in Indigenous communities are very high, and it's pretty clear this is linked to diets. So if food sovereignty contributes to better health and a healthier diet, less processed foods. So diabetes has been called the post-colonial disease. And obviously it doesn't just impact Indigenous communities, but we see them being very hard hit by it. So food sovereignty is a treaty right, the ability to fish, hunt, and so on territory in Canada and the United States. This has often been not followed, and so we see, I know in the region I'm in, so for instance, the lakes often used to be covered in wild rice. Now it's been taken for cottages and so on. So land issues, food issues all play into the health of Indigenous traditions. An important part of understanding this larger picture is to understand that part of the ongoing Indigenous Renaissance and resurgence has been reclaiming traditional ontologies and cosmologies. And so what I mean by that is worldviews, ways of seeing the world. And so it's very typical of all people to think that the way they understand the world is reality, but in fact, we know that people are completely shaped by their religion and their culture and their social setting. And so when we look at Indigenous ways of viewing the world, we see different views of how the world came into being, the physical body, aesthetics, architecture. All of these are all part of an Indigenous worldview. So reclaiming these is all part, in my opinion, of the larger kind of the healing journey. So I'll be giving examples, and I think it'll be easier to see what I mean when we look at examples. So the first one I'm going to look at is the Blessing Way ceremony used by the Navajo of the southwestern United States. And so the image I'm showing here is of a hogan. So this is a traditional mode of architecture, and so this plays a very important part in the religious and healing ritual. And so this is very much like if you've been on Nipissing campus, there's now a teepee by the library, and so reclaiming these spaces and rebuilding them or maintaining them is vital. And so for any of you who have been in a teepee, you'll know it's circular, so that tells you something about the worldview, that idea that you sit in circles. So the hogan is a traditional Navajo form of architecture, and so the Blessing Way ceremony takes place within this structure. And so the Blessing Way ceremony has been called symbolic therapy, and so it's very interesting. I don't want to reduce it to Western psychology, but we can see that this is an Indigenous form of what we would call psychology as well as physical healing. So again, we're seeing that there's not that division between mind, body, and soul, that they're all one. And also the very key role of aesthetics that's played within these traditions. And so I think aesthetics is something that's seen as very trivial a lot of the time in secular culture, but within many religious cultures, art, creativity, all of these forms are a part of spirituality and healing. So Typically, the way this works is I'm going to just be highlighting certain aspects of the ceremony. And so it takes place at night, and often the whole family and members of the community are involved. So again, we see this idea that it's not just the individual that's seen as being ill, it's that the whole community is going to contribute. So we see that that's a recognition that we're all linked to one another, but also that this person has the support of their family and their community. So it's an elder that oversees the ceremony, somebody who's respected within the community. And again, we're going to be finding this across tradition, that role of sort of the elder who leads the ceremony. So this person often serves as a counselor and guide for individuals and families. And they act as a mentor and a role model. And again, we're going to be seeing that across culture, that the importance of the role model. So in communities where public health may be difficult to access, these ceremonies have been recognized as very important community-based ways of handling challenges. And so I just want to go through the steps of the blessing way ceremony. So the first part is purification. So purification rituals, for any of you who've studied religious studies, will probably know this is typical again across religion, that you start the ritual by purifying. And so often this will be done with the burning of various herbs such as sweetgrass or sage. In other traditions, it might be incense. And so this idea that you're purifying the person and their energy before they go into the ceremony. So it's interesting to note that increasingly across North America, governments are recognizing these kind of practices, and they're becoming, in a sense, part of mainstream healthcare. So another aspect of the blessing way ceremony is looking at the person's dreams, and dreams play a very important role in many Indigenous societies. And again, I'm going to be talking more in detail about dreams and dream healing at the end, towards the end of the course, so I won't spend a lot of time here, but it's just important to know that they're taken very seriously in almost all the world's cultures. In fact, secular Western society is an outlier. If we look at Islamic, Hindu, even parts of Catholic culture, they're taken very seriously. So in the Navajo ceremony, the person may talk about their dreams and have the elder sort of interpret the dreams. Then there's a style of confession. And again, confession is common across culture. This seems to be just an intrinsic part of the way the human psyche is built, that we harboring secrets or harboring troubling information is not good for our health. So we see this practice of confession, where the person will talk about something perhaps that they've done that they're not comfortable with. So in looking at this ceremony, Topper talks about what he calls the therapeutic alliance. Now that's Western language, but the idea that, and it's, many articles have been written on this now, that it's not so much the technique as the relationship between healer and the person approaching the healer that's important. And in Western psychology, this is called the therapeutic alliance. So we're going to see this again across culture, that for these rituals and practices to work, you have to have trust in the healer. And that could be a medical doctor, it could be a nurse, but anyone who works in these fields knows that if that basic trust isn't there, the person is not going to follow the instructions that are given. So that idea of seeing yourself in alliance with that healer. So another important aspect of the blessing way ceremony is the idea of suggestion. So we see within the Hogan, the lights are dim, and so there may be music, there may be dance, and so the person is being put into a space of being, and meditation can do this too, where they're more suggestible, they're more open to what's happening, and this is the point at which there's the use of the sand paintings. As I said before, with the Hogan itself, the whole structure is seen as being a healing space, and then the sand paintings are made on the floor. And so they depict aspects of mythology and the ancestors. And so the sort of most central part of the ritual, along with the prayers, is where the person lies down on the sand painting, and there's an understanding that they're sort of becoming one with divine time and with their divine ancestors. Now, these paintings are very, very beautiful. And so, again, there's that idea of the healing power of aesthetics. And as I was saying before, there's the community and family aspect. And so I just wanted to raise here the idea that it's been said that cultures divide into ones that have the I self and the we self, and we can have a discussion about this on the discussion boards. But I like to ask my students how they feel about this. And I've had some very interesting answers to this question, but certainly within traditional Indigenous cultures, all the ones I know of, there is no sense of the I self as separate. You're part of the group. And so what's been called the we self. So this can manifest in a variety of ways, including going into a doctor's appointment with many members of your family, which can be seen as unusual within a Western, Canadian or American setting. Although that said, I know increasingly people go with their relatives to doctor's appointments because the recognition that you're supporting the person, you're taking notes, and so because when you're getting a diagnosis, it can be overwhelming. So I want you to reflect on this. Do you think of yourself as an I self or a we self? And one of the interesting answers I had from one student was that she said, I'm an I self right now, but I will be a we self when I have my own family and children. Now, for other people, they consider themselves part of their family unit. So one way of doing this that I'll ask the question, if you had the opportunity to have sort of your dream job, but you had to move far away from your family and community, would you take it? So that's one way of getting at whether you're an I self or a we self. It's not the only way, obviously, but I just invite you to reflect on that, how you understand yourself, because within Indigenous communities, there's really no sense of individual healing. It's the whole group has to participate. So this is an image of a Navajo sand painting. You can see the beauty of it here, and the way it is showing the Navajo cosmology. And so I just wanted to end this section with reciting one of the prayers that's done alongside the ceremony. So this is taken from the Yale Forum on Religion, Sacred Texts. And so I think you'll get a good sense of the theology behind it. So in beauty I walk, with beauty before me I walk, with beauty behind me I walk, with beauty above me I walk, with beauty around me I walk. It has become beauty again. Today I will walk out. Today everything negative will leave me. I will be as I was before. I will have a cool breeze over my body. I will have a light body. I will be happy forever. Nothing will hinder me. I walk with beauty before me. I walk with beauty behind me. I walk with beauty below me. I walk with beauty above me. I walk with beauty around me. My words will be beautiful. So you can see very clearly that role. Obviously, this would be recited in the original language, but that idea of beauty and aesthetics as healing, and there's that element of harmony as healing, and we're going to see that's also important in the Greek tradition. As part of the larger resurgence of Indigenous cultures, we also see the reclaiming of regalia, and I'm offering an image here of the jingle dress, and some of you may have seen this at a powwow, these very beautiful dresses. And my student explained to me they have a lot of spiritual significance, and often the woman who wears it will sew on the bells throughout a year with prayers. And so the dress and dances are very connected with healing. And so it's important to also recognize the importance of reclaiming, along with architecture, the clothing. And again, I think in the secular world, we tend to take clothing in a very casual manner, but in fact, it's very important. And so it's part of a larger reclaiming of identity that was stripped away, particularly during residential schools, along with language. and religion. So reclaiming religion, reclaiming clothing, reclaiming aesthetics is all part of a larger cultural healing. Another form of this reclaiming is through craft, such as the creation of birch bark canoes. So this is the image I'm showing here, and many of you will, if you're from Ontario, will be familiar with birch bark canoes. And so many of the Indigenous communities are, again, they're teaching young people to build these crafts. And so I just wanted to give the example from, it's a chapter in Health and Healing in America that's called Healing from Structural Violence. And Julian Cordero talks about ritual and community action as healing. So she talks about the Chumash of California, who have had to heal from, as she puts it, colonialist social policies and Western consumer economies. So this isn't something just in the past. This is an ongoing issue. So she recounts the story of a joint venture between university researchers and her community to build a tomo, or ocean-going canoe, which was used for hundreds of years by the Chumash. So again, reclaiming of these canoes becomes part of the larger healing of the whole community. So one of the first versions of this was in 1997, in which the whole community gathered around to kind of reclaim these modes of building and travel. And so she said it's an important part of the healing that these things be done in a good way. And so many of you will recognize that language, that idea that it's not just the end result, it's the process, it's how you do it that's equally important. So there's certain etiquette around the creation of these vessels. And so a group of young people, in cooperation with environmental groups, took the canoe out onto the ocean. And so this is another thing that you might not see a direct connection between healing, but the reclaiming of these skills is also part of, as she says, healing from structural violence. I want to move us closer to home now by looking at the work of Asha Frost, and she refers to herself as an Indigenous healer. I'm just going to read a little bit from her book, You Are the Medicine, 13 Moons of Indigenous Wisdom, Ancestral Connection, and Animal Spirit Guidance. And this was a bestseller in Canada and the United States. So she says, Ani Bujo, hello. I believe that we dreamed of each other here. I have a recurring vision in which I am standing on the shores of Gitchiname, Wikadung, the Georgian Bay, on Nayashin Ming, my home territory, and I'm watching, listening. I am wearing buckskin and my hair is braided. This vision transcends time, though it somehow lives in my bone memory. I see you in a boat coming to shore and looking to settle here. I welcome you with an open heart and arms, for you are my kin, and I want to develop a relationship with you. I stand with a generous and humble spirit. I am not sure of your intentions, but I know that we are here to build something together. I see myself inviting you onto the land, and as I do, I shift into my medicine woman self, offering you my hand, for I know that we are here for healing, reconciliation, and repair. You are my Niji, my friend. So this is speaking to a lot of issues, obviously reconciliation in the case of Canada with Indigenous nations. The book includes, the structure of the book is the different moons of the year, and I just found it so incredibly inspiring because it's based in the land that I recognize, the animals that I recognize. And so this idea of healing the relationship to the land, healing the relationships to the animal nations is such a key part of all of this also. And so I encourage you to look into the work of Asha Frost. She has a beautiful website if you're interested. And she's offering this wisdom both to her own community and to people outside of her community. I'm going to end now by looking at the Four Directions teaching. And again, there are many versions of this. I'm just talking about the ones that I have learned, particularly since I've been at Nipissing. And so this is a very important way of looking at, as I was saying, Indigenous ontologies, particularly from the region of the Robinson-Huron Treaty and the Anishinaabe nations. And so we can see immediately This is a different view of the human being. And so the idea that we have spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional aspects to the self. We're not just a body. The body's not a machine. So as part of this exercise, I will be putting this in the discussion boards. I want you to engage with this, and I will be including a clip from an elder talking about these teachings so that you get a sort of insider view of these teachings. In religious studies, we call it emic versus etic. So emic is the insider view, and I want to make sure that that's respected. But I do want you to engage with this. So again, in your journal or on a piece of paper, just look at the 4 quadrants, and if it's easier, sometimes it's easier to do it out of 10. You don't have to, but write how you feel in these different quadrants of the self. And so again, I really invite you to be completely honest with yourself. And one of my students a number of years ago, who was a social work student, sort of started the exercise and then said, I'm terrible in all of them. And everybody laughed. But I thought I really appreciated her honesty, because that is often the case. We're overworking, we're often exhausted. So that reflection in and of itself is very important to our own well-being, that we recognize that we're weak in certain areas or all of them. And then the next step, of course, is what do we do about it? So I also invite you to think about what things you could do to strengthen these 4 quadrants so that they're healthier.